Welcome back to the biggest offseason in Cascade Valley history because we got recruits and we got a whole lot of decisions to make. Now, first things first, how things ultimately ended out in the polls. Ole Miss ends up being your national champions, beating what was number 2 Miami at the time, who then falls to number 7. You see Oklahoma, Clemson, LSU, Florida in your top 5. BYU goes from 11 to 6, only losing 2 games this year. They've been honestly making a pretty good name for themselves out there. Penn State at number 10. We finished the season at number 15. 3 losses, not exactly ideal, but it is what it is at this point. You see Iowa in there, a little bit Nebraska. Army falls back to 22, and Toledo just sits behind Alabama, who lost 5 games this season. They're kind of falling off. Now, we've already covered the awards in the previous episodes. Today, we're going to cover All-Americans, stats, career stats, some of our seniors. Then we're going to keep it moving and get that recruiting done. Former Cascade Valley great Cedric Thornton ends up being the top quarterback in the nation as the number 1 QB selected for the All-American team. We see Sean Stewart on our side, the guy he beat out, or lost to, for the Heisman. Eric Scott ends up being below him on the All-American list. Weird, but it is what it is. You see Kevin Holt, who is the number 1 receiver for Cedric Thornton. Again, those guys made a heck of a pair over there in Texas Tech. And then from our squad, really nobody else on offense. You see George Fry, middle linebacker. You see Matthew Fowler. You see James Mitchell, who stepped up huge this season with the loss of Mike Hemphill for the majority of the year. And then the last player we're going to have is Jonah Shackelford on the first team. Again, a true freshman. A lot of work to be done for him for zone coverage, but the dude was a stud. On the second team, Nick Petty ends up being the top quarterback. You see Cedric Neal from the Raging Cajuns as well. But again, nobody really on the offensive side for us, which is, I'm not surprised. Corey Brown, the defensive tackle. We see Stephen Lowe, the right outside linebacker, making the All-American team yet again for his career. And then after that, there's nobody else. On the freshman side, Braden Mobley from USC becomes the top quarterback, as well as Reginald Stubbs from Iowa State. We're going to see Ken Patterson over there from Southern Miss. We're going to have Mark Wood, who was wearing number 7 for a lot of the season. We swapped that to number 66 going into the offseason, but he was great as a redshirt freshman. And then as we move on, we're going to see George Fry and Jonas Shackelford both be on the freshman list because they were top on the All-American list as well. For the Big Ten first team, we're going to see Braden Mobley being the quarterback. We're going to see Sean Stewart over here being the top running back because he's the best running back in the nation, in my opinion. And as you sort of move forward, you're seeing again Corey Brown, we're seeing George Fry, we're seeing Stephen Lowe, we're seeing Matthew Fowler, James Mitchell. I mean, look at what our secondary literally is the secondary for the All-American first team or the Big Ten first team. You see Fowler, you see Mitchell, you see DeMel Hill, who's again true sophomore, you see Jonas Shackelford, and you see the kicker Aiden Bailey, but our punter didn't exactly make the list. We're sorry. On the second team for the Big Ten, you're going to see Schwenke. You're going to see Thomas, Melvin Payne, who gave us a whole lot of pain earlier this season. Dylan Davis is out there as well. James Jackson, our redshirt sophomore center, is going to make that list and make the cut. And then really, we're not going to see anybody else except for Bernard Harvey as one of the corners. And we're going to see Michael Barnes, who won punter of the year, but somehow got second team for the Big Ten. Make that make sense. Now, in terms of the leaders for each statistical category this season, Cedric Thornton actually led everybody with 3,104 yards. Patrick McDonald, 2,590. Not a terrible year for him from a yardage standpoint, but not exactly what we wanted. From a running standpoint, Clayton ends up leading Air Force with 2,121. The only guy to eclipse 2,000 yards this season was Sean Stewart going for 1,433. On the receiving side, we're going to see again Kevin Holt dominate with 1,808 with Cedric Thornton. And then we have honestly nobody to be proud about. We'll talk about where our guys ultimately ended up on that point. From a tackle perspective, we dominated George Fry. This list is a little skewed, but George Fry dominates really well there. From a sack perspective, we see Corey Brown go with 6. The leader in the season ends up going with 10.5. Interceptions, we have a feeling Hemphill would have been a little bit high on this list, but it's Walters from UTSA, tied with a lot of different guys. And then Fowler had 4, putting him 45th on the list. And then kicking, for the longest field goals kicked ultimately this season, you're going to see a 55-yarder by 2 different players, but we ended up having Aiden Bailey kick a 43-yarder. Again, a lot of potential. We'll get closer to 50 yards later this season, but I'm not mad at how we played. Taking a look at the stats, you're going to see obviously a lot of guys played quarterback this season. We had 4 total guys line up at QB. Kendrick ends up going with 747, but McDonald with a 2590. He had 20 touchdowns, 20 interceptions. Not exactly ideal. We're going to see that he had as long as 61. Kendrick had a long of 81. He was sacked 22 times, which honestly isn't as high as what it could have been considering how bad the offensive line was this year. From a rushing standpoint, it was the bulk of Sean Stewart carrying the load. 1,433 yards for him, 20 rushing touchdowns. No one else had more than 320. And then we're going to see that he only had 8 rushes that were longer than 20 yards, but he didn't fumble a single time this season. I think there was 1 fumble that technically was overruled, so thank God. From a touchdown perspective, though, look at what Quinn Robinson did. 8 touchdowns in 24 attempts. I mean, yes, he had one game that was literally 6 touchdowns at the end of the season, but the dude honestly wasn't bad, and hopefully he comes back for his senior season to get a couple of carries here and there. On the receiving side, Sean Stewart led us with 58 receptions, 564 yards, 4 touchdowns, but the yardage was actually led by Jeremy Willis getting 641 with 4 touchdowns, Anthony Minor getting 601 yards with 4 touchdowns, and then obviously we see the most touchdowns he's by RJ Riley, who gets 5 touchdowns on 555 yards that he's with a long of 81. The dude was a legend. Blocking, James Jackson led us with 16 pancakes in the season. For the most sacks given up, it was Marquez Smith and Chris Johnson. Both are seniors and they're leaving, so we'll see what they can ultimately have filled in for them coming into next year. From a tackle perspective, we're seeing George Fry had 84 tackles in the season, leading the team as a true freshman. From a tackles for loss perspective, we're seeing 17 by Stephen Lowe. The guy had a massive year, despite sort of playing second fiddle to a freshman at this point. And then from a sack perspective, we see Corey Brown with 6. We got 5 by Kendall Owens, George Fry, James Mitchell, and Tony Rutledge. We had 3 by Amir Carson. Chris Bass kind of fell off this season, had about 40 tackles in total, only 2 sacks. We expected so much more. I mean, look what he was doing. 30 in 2018, 56 in 2019, and then falls off at 39 this season. We'll ultimately see what he does in his senior year next year if he comes back. Interception-wise, again, Matthew Fowler with 4. Harvey had 3 as well as George Fry. Shackelford had 2. We had 1 by DeMel Hill, Stephen Lowe, Mike Hemphill in his one game that he ultimately came back in, Tom Baker, and James Mitchell. And then defensive touchdown-wise, we only had 1. It was that pick 6 we saw from Jonas Shackelford where he ran it back for about 20 yards back that really changed the tide of that game for us, but 1 defensive touchdown just doesn't feel like Cascade Valley. Aiden Bailey was perfect from field goals this year, 11 for 11, a long of 43, but as you guys know, he missed 1 extra point in the last game, 62 of 63. A small blemish in his record, but still 98%, you can't be mad. And this dude again hits a 49-yarder, just missing out on a 50. And then Matt Barnes, 19 punts, 916 yards. Like, if you're a punter at Cascade Valley, you ain't got to punt really a whole lot. It's a pretty easy job. Kick return, Will Hayes did pretty well, 19 for 455 yards and averaged at 23.9 with 1 touchdown. You love how he did. He'll be returning a lot of punts for us next season, especially with Hemphill being gone. And then from a punt return perspective, Tom Baker, 17 for 237, an average of nearly 14 yards per attempt, and a touchdown, which was a long of 85 yards. You love to see what Tom Baker did throughout his career. Career stat-wise, not a lot has really changed. Patrick McDonald was his first season. Kendrick is now with 1,386 yards with 10 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. From a rushing perspective, Sean Stewart finishes with 2,606 yards, 50 touchdowns in his career. Love that he actually hit that half-century mark. That's a big W for him. From a receiving standpoint, Tom Baker has the most receptions of this core that comes through, 147, but the yardage is actually going to go to Mr. RJ Riley, 2,549 for him, with 17 touchdowns, a big W. But Tom Baker of this group, 22 receiving touchdowns. I mean, what can you say? He's not quite Lonnie Downs, but still, Tom Baker was a weapon in every sense of the purpose. Jason Miller finishes with 29 pancakes, 5 sacks given up. Chris Johnson gets 24. James Jackson probably will pass both of those guys. He's only a redshirt sophomore at this point. And then we're seeing Marquez Smith only with 18. Sacks given up. Let's see who gave up the most sacks over the course of their career. It was Chris Johnson. We'll be seeing you, buddy. Tackle-wise, look at what Stephen Lowe did over the course of his career. 260 tackles, 69 tackles for a loss, 17 sacks, and 5 interceptions. You love to see what he did over the course of his career. Matthew Fowler at 179, Mike Hemphill at 159, despite missing quite a few games here in his senior season. He ended up having 20 tackles for a loss as a corner. That's insane right there. We're seeing Chris Bass. Some of these guys had pretty good years. Jake Coleman literally only played 2 years in the field, barely played at all this season. Bernard Harvey had about 80 plus tackles as well. From a sack perspective, we can see ultimately who did the most work here. Stephen Lowe was 17. Corey Brown is a junior, and we got a couple sophomores in there as well. And the next closest senior ends up being Matthew Fowler, who had 5 sacks. Fun fact, Mike Hemphill never had a sack in his career. But interception-wise, Mike Hemphill dominated. 19, a Cascade Valley record. Fowler ends up finishing pretty highly there as well. I believe Jordan Damon had more than him, but still he ends up being 3rd in the all-time list with 13. Bernard Harvey ends up having 8. We're seeing Stephen Lowe have 5. Tom Baker, who again barely played defensive side of the ball, ended up having 3 interceptions in his time here. So many legends. The Tom Baker did it all. But the craziest stat to me is the fact that defensively, Mike Hemphill scored 7 touchdowns in his career. That's just legend status. And I think what's cool to look at for Mike Hemphill, so he had 7 interceptions. He gets 2 kick return touchdowns, giving him 9 total. He never had a punt return for a touchdown. Passing, he never threw a pass. Rushing, he never ran. Receiving, though, he ends up getting 6 receiving touchdowns. So overall, I mean, this man scored 15 total touchdowns as a primary defender. What a legend. And Aiden Bailey being a freshman, we'll skip his stats as you've already seen that, but Matt Barnes punted 79 times for 3,692 yards, an average of 43 basically for his net. Had 3 punts blocked in the course of his career, but he had 14 touchbacks and a long of 55. I wouldn't say he's the GOAT punter, but honestly, he was pretty good in his time here. Now, Coach Mervin McMervin is giving a 5-year contract extension because, again, he's done an incredible body of work here. 5-7 in his first year, then 10-3, 13-1, 11-3, 15-0, 15-0, 12-2. He won 3 national titles in a row, and then, well, the team only won 10 games a season with 3 losses. Could this be a downward trend? Cascade Valley doesn't believe that. They believe he's going to bounce right back, but 9-1 in bowl games. I mean, that's tough. 31-9 versus the top 25. Give this man a lifetime contract already. Now, there was some coach movement. We ended up losing our defensive coordinator, which honestly isn't the worst thing in the world. Our defense was absolutely terrible, and we're getting Spence Nowinski coming in to hopefully save this defense a little bit. Now, with the new defensive coordinator locked up, we've got some stuff going on over here. We see Chris Bass actually declaring he's a projected first rounder. I don't blame him, but I would love to try to see if we can get him to ultimately stay. So the chances of him coming back are looking low for college degree, national championship, all this stuff, win the best linebacker. There's a lot that we could ultimately guarantee this dude, but honestly, I can't be mad at a guy who's projected to be an NFL first rounder leaving in his junior season. Go get that money, Chris Bass. Go get that money. To complicate things, though, Joe Kendrick decides that he wants to stay. Matt Wilson's ultimately coming back. Tony Rutledge is also going to be coming back, which those are all fantastic news. Mike Hemphill, Jeremy Willis, and Matthew Fowler are all projected to be first rounders. RJ Riley, Anthony Miner, Tom Baker are projected to be second rounders. A 4th rounder for Matt Barnes. That's pretty high for a punter, if you ask me. Sean Stewart projected to be a 5th rounder. Feels disrespectful, if you ask me. We're also seeing Marquez Smith, a 5th rounder, and Stephen Lowe, a 6th rounder. Might be the most players we ever could potentially see drafted, and I think whoever gets Stephen Lowe is going to be super happy. We're also seeing Jay Coleman, Chris Johnson, Bernard Harvey, Steven Sampson, George Barrett, Jason Miller, all graduating. I feel like some of these guys could be drafted. Miller probably, Barrett probably, Bernard Harvey in my opinion, but you know what? They're missing out. The actual NFL draft results are huge. We see Jeremy Willis, Chris Bass, Matthew Fowler, and Mike Hemphill all go in the first round, which is huge. Anthony Miner is our lone 2nd rounder. RJ Riley goes in the 3rd. Barnes goes in the 4th, as well as Tom Baker, and Sean Stewart goes around earlier than projected. Somebody saw how talented he was. Marquez Smith ends up getting drafted in the 4th round. Stephen Lowe goes in the 4th, 2 rounds earlier. Chris Johnson gets drafted. I think he was actually not projected to be drafted. Jason Miller gets drafted. Bernard Harvey got drafted. You love to see how many guys we ultimately got drafted this year. I feel like this is a record, and I'm happy about that. Recruiting day is an absolutely huge one, and we landed some major recruits. Garrett Neely, who we were fighting for our lives for the entire season, we ultimately end up getting, so we get the 4-star tackle. Kingsley Spencer we get, a great underrated cornerback that will ultimately probably sit the bench early, but then come on later. Braden Willis, who is a talented center, we did not get, so we have to remove him from our board there. Jalen Ferris, another talented tackle, we did not get him. We were striking out a little bit of some of these guys. Charlie Millen, we really wanted, but we ultimately didn't have enough firepower to get him. But we did get Alvin Camp, a great guard that's, again, super underrated. Anthony Odiari, who I think will be great. We blew out Miami out of the water for this one. Jaquez Ness, who we blew Eastern Michigan out of the water for him as well. He's going to be, I think, a shutdown corner from day one. Can't wait to show you his stats. Then we have Antonio Vaughn, DJ Montelis. A lot of these guys you ultimately know, but our class ended up being a top 5. And not just a top 5, but a top 2 class. We were so close to being the #1 class for the first time in school history at the end of the season. But you know what? I'm not mad at this. 1 5-star, 10 4-stars, 11 3-stars, only 1 2-star. That's a big W. We have a ridiculous amount of changes we're going to be making here, especially on the defensive side of the ball for positions. But one of the big ones we're going to make is moving Will Hayes from free safety to right outside linebacker. He's been battling with DeMel Hill. We have Jonas Shackelford, a strong safety. I think this dude could really be an impact player for us at right outside linebacker. And I say that because he literally becomes the day 1 starter going over Chris Jordan right there. 94 speed, 94 agility at outside linebacker. This is going to be huge for us. For Brandon Holt, one of the athletes, we're moving him from his sort of athlete position where he could play a little bit on offense over to free safety, which is his highest rated position, and he'll be redshirted day 1. I really feel like Anthony Odiari is going to be a stud at some point in this team. Strong safety, free safety could be a 75 overall. Middle linebacker could be, but we have 2 great middle linebackers that are ultimately coming in, and we're pretty good across the board at linebacker. But left end, right end, I think is where we're going to ultimately put him. We're going to put him at right end for right now. Probably a red shirt because we've got some good guys at that position already. But adding depth to the defensive line, I am not mad about at all. With so many guys leaving the wide receiver spot, we need a guy that can play. Now, I will put this out. Antonio Vaughn could play quarterback. He's an 87 overall at quarterback. But there's a guy that's rated higher than that. You'll see just a moment. Halfback, he could potentially play, but I think we're going to be pretty much good in that spot potentially. I think for right now, we're putting Antonio Vaughn at wide receiver because we're going to need the wide receiver help soon, and he's going to be one of our top-rated guys from day one. Jake Dalton is an interesting guy because he's an 81 overall athlete who primarily wants to play quarterback. But if we put him at quarterback, he's an 81. But again, we have a guy significantly higher rated than that. I don't know if he makes the most sense to put there. Can't really play much else on offense. If we go to defense, left outside linebacker, middle linebacker, right outside linebacker. He's a 70 overall free safety. There's a bit of a logjam there, but I think we put him there for now. Maybe he comes back to offense at some point, depending, but this is where he ultimately goes. DJ Mangero is a dude who could play quarterback for us, but he's pretty slow and can't really play running back. He's got like 81 speed. Can't really play wide receiver. Tight end maybe is a possibility, but he's pretty lowly rated there. On defense, I mean, linebacker, they're saying corner maybe, free safety, strong safety. I think maybe we put him at free safety, move one of our other guys over to strong safety. But again, there's not a lot to love with him. He's sort of a weird fit for us. And so because we put Mangero over there at free safety, we're going to put Jake Dalton over to strong safety. Again, not exactly the perfect fit, but this dude's 6'6". We have to find a way for this dude to play in some way. Last but not least is, I think, the most important recruit in Cascade Valley history. Warren Fullwood. We're talking about a dude with 95 speed, 95 acceleration, incredible moves across the board, could return the ball, has 95 throw power, 81 throw accuracy, 90 juke move, 96 elusiveness. This is the guy that's going to change our program. And at quarterback, he's an 88. At halfback, he's an 83. At wide receiver, 78. We're going to sort of keep going through and see what he can ultimately be. An 82 at corner. Look, his best position is quarterback, and this is a guy that I fully believe in can carry this program. Warren Fullwood, you're our quarterback. That leaves Joe Kendrick in a really weird spot. I still think McDonald can be our backup quarterback for right now, because what if things don't work out for Fullwood? What if he gets injured like a lot of our quarterbacks have? We need somebody there that can really get the job done. But I think for Joe Kendrick, we move him over to, I think, halfback. We're going to need a little bit of help there. Maybe we're going to redshirt one of our recruits that came in. I think Joe Kendrick can still help us out a lot there. And now with an added offseason to really train at that position, he might get a little bit better and be a really good running back. Now, we also have a ton of receivers that are going to be helping us out this season. And Terrence Williams honestly played pretty good at running back last season. Something I noticed is that if we move him over to halfback, he becomes an 87 overall. I think Terrence Williams is going to be our starting running back this season. Terrence, get ready to run the football. Now, another thing you might be noticing is that we have Christoph Houston and Sam Dees, and George Fry was an award winner last season as a true freshman. We're going to be moving him over to left outside linebacker, which is going to make him a starter. We're going to actually start him over Isaiah Holman, who typically had been there. But again, I believe in George Fry more than I believe in Holman. So after the training results, unless George Fry just bottoms out, he will be sitting there at our starting left outside linebacker. One more change here. Brandon Ho, we initially had a free safety. We're actually going to move him to corner. I know he is a little bit more lower rated there, but we're going to redshirt him. He's going to be sitting in a good spot where he can ultimately come and be maybe a little bit better of a player coming into next season, which we're going to need more depth there because our guys are good, but there's room for improvement. One of the biggest things every single year is what our training results ultimately look like. Ben Williams, who I thought was going to be the odd man out, ends up having a major offseason, going up 6 overall. McDonald only goes up a single point. Maybe we should have moved him to a different position. Terrence Williams, I think, is going to flourish here at halfback. He ends up being a 90 overall. This is going to allow us to redshirt one of our new recruits that came in. Joe Kendrick can kind of be there as sort of a weird wildcat, change of pace guy. It's going to be fun with those two guys back there. Robinson probably won't play much really his senior season here, but again, I don't really hate how our running back room is going to be looking. Daryl Burris, the transfer fullback that we had, ultimately becomes a 69 overall, #nice. And I think this dude's going to be pretty fun. We go over to wide receiver. Jalen Clark has a massive upgrade, +5 overall to become an 88. We see Porter Ryan get a little bit extra for his speed, which is much needed. Now he's an 87 overall. We see Matt Wilson pretty much stay the same, which I didn't really expect. We see Chris Mack III go up to a 73 overall and getting a +2 to his speed. And then Brandon Revels is going to go up +3 +3 to a 71, getting an increase to his speed as well. Look, this wide receiver room is going to be great. We just need some more veteran leadership to really step up. At tight end, Armani Fernie is ready to go. The sophomore is now an 89 overall, gets +3 to his strength. His blocking should be more improved this year. At left tackle, Markwood goes up +4 to an 87 overall. We're going to see at left guard, Shane Walker goes up +3, getting increased strength here. Now he's a 78. At center, we have a whole lot of guys getting better. Wesley Gaines up to an 89 +5. We see James Jackson go up +3 to an 87. Jaquez Simmons goes up +2 to an 86. And Darius Bush goes up +4 to a 79. These guys may not all be playing center this season. We may be moving them around a little bit, but the offensive line should be good. At right guard, Derek Simpson's an 82 with a +2 overall for Dylan Baker to make him an 81. We're going to see at right tackle, Jaree Sanders is going to go up +5 to an 83. Chris Way goes up +5 to an 83. Roy Ray goes up +2 to an 80. Again, the offensive line is getting significantly better. At left end, we're going to see Tony Rutledge up +4 to a 90. Kendall Owens goes up huge, +4 to 85 for his true sophomore season. Scotty Drayton goes up +5 to an 84 overall. There is some talent to be had here. On the right side of the defensive line, Pat Hill goes up +3 to an 82. We see Justin Durant go up +6 to a 79, a huge increase for him. And then Kenny Davis of a modest +2 to a 76. On the interior of the defensive line, we're going to see a +3 for Corey Brown to an 84. He was great last season. Amir Carson, who was also great, goes up +4 to an 84. Sean Anderson up +4 to an 83. We see Marcel Wakefield up +3 to an 82. +4 for Brian Wilkins to an 81. And then Braxton Bickley didn't really do the best. He ate more Cheetos than he ate anything else. And, well, this dude should have been studying and working on his game tape. At left outside linebacker, we see a +2 to Isaiah Holman. We see George Fry go down -2. This puts a heck of a dilemma. Do we keep George Fry as a starter? Do we not? This dude won some awards last season, but did it go to his head? There's some decisions to be made here. Demetrius Williams up +2 to a 76. Jamel Thomas up +2 to a 67. Middle linebacker Brian Alvarez goes up +7 to an 81. I mean, that is a huge jump, probably the biggest jump we've seen so far this offseason. Leonard Morgan +4 to a 75. That right outside linebacker Will Hayes, who changed positions, goes up +1 to a 79, as well as Chris Jordan going up +3 to match him at a 79. At corner, we see James Mitchell go up +2 to an 83. I believe he'll be our top-rated corner now. Kendall Johnson goes up +4 to an 82, and then Nate D. Ward goes up +1 to an 80. These guys all got better, got a little bit faster and a little bit smarter. That's good for me. At free safety, DeMel Hill actually goes down, so he's an 84 now, which again, a guy who played pretty well, was an All-American, and then all of a sudden it goes to his head. And then at strong safety, we're going to see a +4 for Jacob Coleman, a +3 for Jonas Shackelford. I mean, I don't know. Does Coleman start over Shackelford? Do we make some changes? We got to see what our starting lineup's going to look like. And then Kenneth Clark goes up +3 to a 73. At kicker, Aiden Bailey goes up +4. He's now an 89 overall as a sophomore, which is huge. And then at punter, we brought in somebody new, so no one's changing there. Similar to the real world, there's going to be some swapping and some moving in the Big Ten. We're going to see UCLA join the Big Ten West, as well as USC, who has already been here for a season or two. Illinois swaps over to the East to help them out a little bit for that alignment. You can only have 6 teams essentially per side, or whatever, 8 teams, whatever it is. Math is hard, but this is the new alignment for the Big Ten. No other major movement, but you've already seen some moves that we've predicted before that have happened. So to walk through our red shirts this offseason, we're keeping Warren Fullwood and Patrick McDonald both without a red shirt. Ben Williams obviously was redshirted last season. We'll talk about Patrick McDonald in a second. Halfback, we have 1 red shirt. That's going to be Roderick Johnson. I think with Terrence Williams being the top dog and Kendrick being there as well, learning the position this season, I want Roderick Johnson to have a season to sort of learn, get that acceleration up, which is only an 81 overall. You go to fullback, Burris is obviously still there. Jalen Clark and company are going to be there. Mikael Smith is too good at an 85 overall to bench, so we're going to keep him as a starter. We're going to have Antonio Vaughn, the freshman, is going to redshirt this season and be a top dog for us next season, because we're going to, again, we have a really young receiving core, and I want to make sure that he gets an extra year of eligibility. At tight end, we have no red shirts. At left tackle, we're going to be redshirting Alex Prater. At left guard, none. Center, we have none, because Jaquez Simmons and some of these guys are going to be moving around to different spots. At right guard, Alvin Camp is going to be redshirted. At right tackle, both Garrett Neely and Ernest Hamilton will both be redshirted. Left end, no red shirts. Right end, we have 1 red shirt, Anthony Odiari, because again, we have a junior in front of him and Pat Hill. I think he's going to be playing next season, but it's just a matter of giving him a little bit of time. At defensive tackle, no red shirts, as all those guys redshirted last season. George Fry, I've been tempted to redshirt him, but we're going to give him an opportunity. We're going to see what he can do. He's going to split some time with Holman, and we'll see if he can get his act together. If not, there's bigger questions and problems with him. And middle linebacker, D's Nuts will unfortunately be redshirted. I want to give Christoph Houston some time. Alvarez had a great jump this offseason, so I'm going to give D's a little bit of time of eligibility. And then a right outside linebacker, we have none. Corner, we have 4. We're going to have CJ Sannon, Brandon Holt, Kingsley Spencer, and Darius Richardson. We've got 5 guys that are really good, and we have some guys that are playing at safety that are sitting on the bench that can also fill in a little bit at corner. We don't need these guys to play right now. We need these top 5 to be there. We have 2 freshmen that are starting. We have a senior. We have a young corner core. We need these guys to chill. At free safety, we're going to have Mangiero and Miles Smith, both redshirting. At strong safety, we're going to have Jake Dalton redshirting because he's learning a brand new position. Again, was a quarterback in high school, comes in. We don't really know what he's going to be doing. Shackelford is probably still going to be starting. We'll see what Coleman can ultimately do. Maybe he's sliding down in one of the corner spots as well. Kicker, no redshirt, and punter, no redshirt either. Here's a look at our schedule for this season. We're not playing in week 1. Week 2, we open up with Western Michigan and let our new quarterback get acclimated to this sort of college football. We have number 25 Ohio State immediately after in a rivalry game. We play Iowa State. We then face Notre Dame for, I believe, the first time in the regular season in school history. We have Indiana. We have number 14 Iowa. We then go to USC. We come home for Purdue. We go to UCLA. We go to Nebraska. Number 15 Nebraska. We come home for Minnesota and home for Wisconsin. Then it's conference championship week, which I fully expect we'll be playing in. There's a whole lot still to figure out for this team. Who's going to be playing where? Who's starting? What will be happening with Patrick McDonald? Let's just say he's getting some time at wide receiver this season. And then if he flourishes, then next season he becomes a wide receiver because we need some guys that can step up, make some big plays. While McDonald had some issues at quarterback, he's still having a chance to play quarterback. It's just we're giving him some chances at wide receiver as well. A tough schedule, an insane amount of seniors that left. We had 14 players drafted in this past offseason. That is a school record, and we are going to be needing to replenish this talent and getting guys to step up. We didn't make the postseason last season, and this season, it might be more tough than ever to do so. Be safe, be smart, tell somebody you love them. Catch you guys on the next one.